Hello, this is Reading Rails and I'm Mike Verada-Stone. Today I am going to be looking at the ActiveSupport Inflector utility, and I've got version 4.2.0 checked out, which is the latest Rails, and I've got a few browser tabs open so we can dive right in. So the ActiveSupport Inflector gem, it allows us to do a few things. So I can take strings like, say, dog, and I can say pluralize it. And I could take similarly dogs and singularize it. And it also exposes a bunch of other methods similar to that, or along that vein of like converting strings from one form to another. So let's just get started and dive right in. So this is our Inflector directory. So actually I'm going to go over to the browser because it's a little easier to see. So Inflector.rb, this is what you want to include if you just want the Inflector utility. And these are the various things it's going to include. So let's just take a look at Inflections.rb. So looks like this file is responsible for listing the various ways to convert something from singular to plural. I see there's an irregular method which looks like it can convert things that aren't like typical, ends in S sort of stuff, or maybe they're just rather strange conversions. And then these are uncountable, so you have one rice or three rice, or one species or three species. Okay. Let's take a look at Inflections.rb. Okay. So looks like a lot of these are just calling the Inflector class itself. Now this is kind of interesting because I would have thought that the Inflector would be just included directly into string, but it looks like instead this is just adding methods and invoking the Inflector sometimes, but other times doing something a little more customized. So let's see what Pluralize does. So it sometimes calls the Inflector pluralize, but if count is 1, so let's see, locale equals count if count is a symbol. So I guess that's in this case when you just want to pluralize it with the locale. Okay. So if count is 1, then it just dupes it. Now why is that? Let's see. Pluralize 1 becomes apple. Huh. So I wonder if that means, does that mean that if I'm in IRB and I say dog dot pluralize 1, so that returns dog. But what if I say dogs.pluralize 1? So it just returns itself. So, well, let's read the documentation, which I probably should have done before that. Returns the plural form of the word in the string. If the optional parameter count is specified, the singular form will be returned if count is 1. For any other value of count, the plural will be returned. Okay. If the optional parameter locale is specified, the word will be pluralized as a word of that language. By default, this parameter is set to English. You must define your own inflection rules for languages other than English. Okay. So now, when I read this documentation, I don't immediately see that expects the word to already be singular. but based on reading the code, it looks like that is an assumption that it's already singular, and then pluralizing it is going to convert it. So that's kind of interesting to me. So Singularize just looks like it passes it on to Inflector. Now that I think about it, I think I understand why this isn't simply including the inflector, because of course it needs to pass itself into these methods like Singularize. So that should be a duh moment for me. Constantize. So okay, so here's one where it's a little different than just kind of passing itself onto the inflector. So camelize, the first letter upper. So case first letter when upper, inflector dot camelize self true. When lower, inflector camelize self false. Okay. Now one thing I find interesting about this is it doesn't look like it handles like the error case when you might provide something other than upper or lower, but I guess it just assumes that you're going to pass in the correct something correct. So by default, camelize converts strings to upper camel case. If the argument to camelize is set to lower, then camelize produces lower camel case. Camelize will also convert slash to : : which is useful for converting paths to namespaces. Okay. So there's where you pass in lower. So now let's take a look. So if I say dogs dot camelize, and then I can say lower, and if I just pass in garbage, as I saw in the code, that isn't really handled, it just returns nil. Not really documented, but I guess that's not entirely unexpected behavior. If you pass in junk, junk's going to happen. Camel case is the same as camelize. Okay. Titleize just gets passed on, underscore, dasherize, demodulize, deconstantize, parameterize. Okay. Just going to look for anything. Okay, so I'm down to the bottom, and it looks like those are the only ones that really have any special behavior when extending the string class itself. So let's take a look at what these methods are all calling. The ActiveSupport Inflector. So let's see, we're in Inflector. I think they're in methods. Let's take a look. Yeah, looks like this is the right place. So this is interesting to me. I've never really done this myself. Extend self. I assume that just means so it's gonna these methods will be available on the inflector itself, which is how, for example, this is called kind of like a instance method of inflector, even though, or rather an instance of the inflector class, like a class method, but these are instance methods, so I guess the extend self does that. Now I'm just going to play with that a little bit because I've never done that before. So if I have a module A, I'm going to extend self and def A and just return 1, 2, 3. Okay, so now if I say A.A, sure enough, even though I extended before defining it, anything that's in that module or gets added to that module will in turn be extended on the module A itself. And if I have a class and I include A, that means b.new.a will return 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's pretty cool. So I can use it as a module and extend it into something, or rather include it into something, and I can also treat them as like kind of a namespace for those methods themselves. Now I wonder, does B get those methods at all? Okay, so B doesn't get them, which makes sense, I guess. It's only including instance methods from the module. Okay, let's go back to the code and look around. Okay, pluralize. Apply inflections given the word with the inflections locale.plurals. Okay, so I'm not sure what inflections does, so let's see if I can let's find inflections. Well, I guess I should look for def inflection. No, that's not defined there. Okay. Well, let's just go and invoke it. So ActiveSupport inflector dot inflections, and then I pass in a locale. So it's an ActiveSupport Inflector inflections. Okay. So now let's just take a look at what that is. That must be in here. So it's an instance of this inflections class. Okay. So a bunch of attributes defined, and here they get instantiated. So if we go back here, so inflections.plurals, that's this first one here, and that's just an array. Okay. So if we just say inflections.plurals, and then it's just an array of arrays, it looks like. Yeah. And I think we saw that back here. See, inflect.plural. So this must be adding these as another plural inflection point. Now I wonder what's the order of these. I guess, did it go bottom up? Well, let's take a look. So zombies is first in the list. So where is that found in inflections? Let's just take a look. Oh, it's irregular. Interesting. Okay, so does that mean that then this first one is going to be last? So let's just see. Last. Oh, yep, sure enough, it's last. So I would imagine then that that when you pluralize something, it's gonna go from the bottom up. Uncountable, presumably. I guess those get ignored, or maybe they're matched exactly. So let's just kind of trace through the method and see. So whoops, wanted to go here. So apply inflections, the word, and then it gives it the plurals. So okay, so let's see if we can find apply inflections. Is there a def? Ah, there we go. Okay, so applies inflection rules for singularize and pluralize. Okay. So the word is converted to a string and then duped. Okay. So if the word is empty, or inflections.uncountables.includes the result.downcase boundary word character plus end of character. Okay, so it's looks like it's looking at the last word to see if it matches one of these uncountables. So it grabs the last word and sees is it one of them. Okay, and then it just returns the result. Okay, that makes sense. So empty, trying to pluralize or singularize empty, just returns itself, and then the uncountables, just since you can't count those are, you know, just stay the same no matter what, just returns it directly. Okay. Otherwise, rules.each, rule replacement, break if result.sub rule replacement. Okay, so that's going to break the first time result.sub returns anything. Now, if I remember correctly, result sub will return something if it actually applies substitution. So let's just test that out and just make sure my assumption there is correct. So abc.sub, well, let's store it in a variable. So a equals abc, a.sub, let's just give it a regular expression of xyz with 1, 2, 3, and that returns nil. So that would return false, so then it would not break in that case. But if it did match, let's say B, and returned D, it returns what was substituted, and so it would then break and then return results. So that means since this list looks like it was in the reverse order of when they were added, so it's essentially going to go through this bottom up, and presumably if you define your own inflections, they presumably get prepended to the beginning, and those would be checked first before the default Rails stuff. So that's how you could probably easily override these behavior. If you wanted to just kind of change one of these, you could just provide one that kind of supersedes it.